It's time for Security Now. We got a lot of security news. Steve is up in arms on this one. CMU taking $1 million from the NSA to break Tor. What's that all about? And we'll look at the drumbeat. It's increasing once again to put backdoors and encryption so the bad guys can't do bad things. Steve has a rebuttal. It's all coming up next on Security Now.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Security Now is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Security Now with Steve Gibson, episode 534, recorded Tuesday, November 17th, 2015. Encryption and the law. Security Now is brought to you by IT Pro TV. A good IT Pro is always learning, and IT Pro TV is the resource to keep your IT skills up to date with engaging and informative video tutorials. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the lifetime of your account, go to itpro.tv/securitynow and use the code SN30. And by Boll and Branch, the most comfortable sheets on the planet. If you order right now, they'll give you $50 off a set of sheets plus free shipping. Just go to BOLL and branch.com and use the offer code SecurityNow. It's time for Security Now. Oh, I look forward to this every week. Every week there are security stories, and I go, I can't wait to hear what Steve Gibson's take on this is.
Well, and Leo, I have to say that you're clearly paying attention because I listen to you being the security expert on your other podcast.
I've absorbed it, yeah.
And no, you have accurately and perfectly.
Good.
So, I just sort of smile and I think, yep, that's exactly right.
I'm storing it away up here, Steve, and I know everybody else is. 534 episodes later, if you've been listening to every show, you are a security expert. If you've understood every word, you're a master. Steve Gibson sometimes gets pretty deep. This one is going to be more about, it sounds like, more about policy than about
we in the wake of the Paris terrorist attacks, not surprisingly, encryption is now back in the forefront. It's it's being used as, if we only had pervasive ability to decrypt communications, then we'd be able to stop these things. And so there's been some really bad reporting, and of course the security experts that we're familiar with. Bruce Schneier comes to mind. Matt Blaze is involved. They understand the details. Largely, our listeners do. But I want to look at some of the mainstream reporting, and then the flip side, because Schneier refers to Glenn Greenwald's piece, which was really good. And and of course, everybody's got a dog in the race. We understand that. We know where people stand. But of course, from our standpoint, the podcast standpoint, we're going to cut through this and look at the reality of what value it would be for them even to have what they say they want, and why the horses have already left the barn. So, but we also have all kinds of crazy stuff to talk about. Some really interesting news this week. As promised, we've got MIT's analysis of the value and virtue, or maybe lack of tinfoil caps. We also have a bunch of interesting miscellany. I've heard you, and I've got my responses to living with my iPad Pro for a week.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I'm up to speed on all of yours and Renee's, and of course Andy's was totally predictable. He did not disappoint in the previous podcast on MacBreak Weekly just before this one. And I also heard you sort of talking about the iPad Pro as a gaming pad, and looking for something that could really use it. And I was brought to mind the fact that there is a game/puzzle that I've never mentioned that years ago completely preoccupied my spare time. That the good news is not just for iOS, iPhone, iPad, but also for Android that we will talk about. And so if my going on in infinite detail here in the second half of the show with the New York Times article and Glenn Greenwald gets a little much for you, no one will know if you have downloaded this and have begun to be absorbed by it, because it is amazing. So all kinds of fun stuff to talk about.
All right. Let's take a break, and we'll get your tinfoil hats in a moment. But first, a word from our sponsor. I haven't said that in a while. It must be the War of the Worlds that's got me thinking that way. Actually, our sponsor is a great company, IT Pro TV, that has been with us since pretty much they started. They just celebrated, I think, their second anniversary in business. What a great company. The whole idea is a natural match for us, because the whole idea of IT Pro TV is that you watch live, much as you would watch our shows, and learn IT skills, whether it's because you're already an IT professional and you need to expand and polish your knowledge, or it's because you're just, you want to get in the business. This is IT training done right. And the guys who started it were IT trainers to begin with, which is kind of cool. I mean, they have a long history of this. But a couple of years ago, they said, let's copy what's happening on Twit, set up our own studio, and start doing programming. They've surpassed us long ago. They have 2 studios. They're now doing 50 hours a week. And they cover, if you look at the course library, really all the courses that you'd need for a CCNA or an MCSA. They do Security Plus, A+, Network Security. They even have some really fun stuff, like the Certified Ethical Hacker Cert from the EC Council. Sean Oriano teaches these, and they're just fantastic. He also teaches crypto. So if you listen to Security Now and you want to kind of know more about this stuff, it's a great place to go. 28 hours of instruction there. And you can watch it, by the way, on your Roku, on your Chromecast. You can see it on your screen, big screen TV, and then pick up where you left off on your iOS or your Android device. They just added Cisco Firepower. I don't know what this means, but I'm sure if you're in IT, you do. Cisco Firepower and Advanced Fireside Administration courses. And it's by Todd Lamley, who's the guy. They say, the rock star when it comes to Cisco networking. And he's written over 25 books. It's one low monthly subscription price, no hassle cancellation, because they're geeks and they know. They understand. You will get membership includes 100 step-by-step virtual machine labs. All you need is an HTML5 browser to try it. You get practice exams from Transcender. That's worth $135. Even if you're already studying with books or you're enrolled in a certification or technical degree program, it is a great way to learn. At your own pace, you can track your progress. Corporate and group pricing available. Now, there is a basic plan that's free, free forever, that allows you don't even need to give them a credit card, to watch live. So that's a great way just to kind of, they program every weekday starting at 9:30 in the morning Eastern. This week, let me see, it's going to be CompTIA Security Plus, AWS SysOps. Oh, that would be good to know. That's Amazon Web Services, right? That would be really useful to know. Active Directory, antivirus, anti-malware, and Bash CLI scripting. Oh, I'm going to watch that one. I'm going to take that one. I'm glad I have my IT Pro TV subscription. It's very affordable if you decide to pay $57 a month, $570 for a whole year. You get 2 months free. And as I said, you can watch live for free. But, of course, once you have a subscription, in fact, pay for the year, because then you can download anything you want and put it on your device. You can watch on an airplane or whatever. They have lots of additional material. Just visit itpro.tv/security now, and you can see all the things they've got going on there to really support you in your learning. And, okay, yes, we have a deal. I was holding out on you. If you use the offer code SN30, 30% off for the life of your account. Now we're talking less than $40 a month. What? How do they do that? Well, they're just great guys, I guess. itpro.tv really is a great way to learn. You're going to enjoy it, and it's affordable. And, if you're one of those people who can, do it yourself, this is easily the most affordable, best way to do it. And we know that because thousands of you have gone through the courses, and we hear from you all the time. It's just great. itpro.tv/security now to find out more, and use the offer code SN30 to save 30% and try it free for 7 days. itpro.tv/security now. All right, Steve, the security news of the week.
Yes, starting with the picture of the week, which was tweeted to me, thankfully, from one of our listeners, because this really does finally resolve this question.
Puts a nail in that coffin.
Yes. Researchers prove that tinfoil hats actually boost receptivity to government signals.
It's like putting an antenna on your head.
This was a formal study done by researchers at MIT titled On the Effectiveness of Aluminum Foil Helmets, an Empirical Study. It was brought to us by How to Geek. Researchers at MIT, using a network analyzer, tested the impact of tinfoil helmets on receptivity of radio frequency signals. They highlight the method and results in the study, which is abstracted here. The abstract reads, and that's all I'll bother everybody with, but it's fun. They said, among a fringe community of paranoids, aluminum helmets serve as the protective measure of choice against invasive radio signals. We investigate the efficacy of 3 aluminum helmet designs on a sample group of 4 individuals. Using a $250,000 network analyzer, we find that although, on average, all helmets attenuate invasive radio frequencies in either direction, meaning either emanating from an outside source or emanating from the cranium of the subject, certain frequencies are, in fact, greatly amplified. These amplified frequencies coincide with radio bands reserved for government use, according to the Federal Communications Commission. Statistical evidence suggests the use of helmets may, in fact, enhance the government's invasive abilities. We speculate that the government may, in fact, have started the helmet craze for this very reason. So, bottom line, take off your tinfoil helmet.
I am calling foul on this one. It's tin foil, not aluminum foil. They've got to go back and do it with tin.
The lead could be important. You're right. Yes.
I think
that would change its electrical characteristics.
Yeah, nobody says an aluminum foil hat. First of all, nobody can pronounce it. Especially if they're crazy
Speaking
paranoids.
of which, aluminium. Are there enough letters in that word to give you that many syllables?
It's spelled that way in Britain with an extra I.
Oh,
they spell it. They don't pronounce it different. Just pronounce it differently. They also spell it differently.
Well, they would have to, because I'm sure you'd run out of letters if you were trying to say
yes.
Aluminium, spelling it the U.S. way.
Yeah.
So, top of the news is a little distressing, and lots of people were upset. The news was broken last Wednesday by motherboard.vice.com that picked up on the fact that evidence that was revealed in a lawsuit from 2014 revealed that the FBI had used information from an educational institution, I think is all it said. They were trying not to say too much, in order to bust some Silk Road 2 purveyors. We'll remember, of course, famously Silk Road was a dark web, Tor service-based meeting ground, marketplace, where buyers and sellers were transacting in illegal merchandise and substances and so forth. And there was, after that was found and shut down, a duplication of that effort. So here's what's distressing. And this is from the day after this news broke last week. The Tor Project blog wrote the following. The Tor Project has learned more about last year's attack by Carnegie Mellon researchers on the hidden service subsystem. Apparently, these researchers were paid. Okay, we're talking university security researchers paid by the FBI $1 million to attack hidden services users in a broad sweep, and then sift through their data to find people whom they could accuse of crimes. We publicized the attack, wrote Tor, last year, along with the steps we took to slow down or stop such an attack in the future. And of course, we covered that a year ago on this podcast, all about hidden services and this was a traffic confirmation attack. And as I have held before and since, that's the biggest weakness that Tor has. And that is, if you suspect endpoints, then it's virtually impossible to block confirming their connection. Less easy to get the connection, but once you suspect it, confirming, it's really hard not to be able to get a high level of confidence on. So continuing with Tor's blog, there is no indication yet that they had a warrant or any institutional oversight by Carnegie Mellon's Institutional Review Board. And we'll come back to this because Matt Green has a really interesting commentary about this whole question of an institutional review board, which is typically something you have in the medical practice, where you want to, verify that subjects of a double-blind crossover study, for example, like if an effect of a test drug is found to be so bad or good, the study needs to be shut down prematurely because, on one hand, you don't want to deny the people getting the placebo the benefits of the good outcome drug, or vice versa. And so this is the first time,
though, that it is also common practice in universities to have such a review board for other academic stuff, especially government grants. No,
I don't know, but Matt Green does address this issue.
Oh, okay.
So yep. We'll be getting there. There's no indication yet that they had a warrant or any institutional oversight by Carnegie Mellon's Institutional Review Board. We think it's unlikely they could have gotten a valid warrant for CMU's attack as conducted, since it was not narrowly tailored to target criminals or criminal activity, but instead appears to have indiscriminately targeted many users at once. Basically, what we believe is it was show us all of the users and services that you can. We're then going to look at them, find criminality, and prosecute.
Fishing expedition.
It was a pure fishing expedition, and they did prosecute, which is how this all came to light.
But it was a child pornographer, so it's okay. Right?
Such action, writes Tor, is a violation of our trust and basic guidelines for ethical research. We strongly support independent research on our software and network, but this attack crosses the crucial line between research and endangering innocent users. This attack also sets a troubling precedent. Civil liberties are under attack if law enforcement believes it can circumvent the rules of evidence by outsourcing police work to universities. If academia uses research, in quotes, as a stalking horse for privacy invasion, the entire enterprise of security research will fall into disrepute. Legitimate privacy researchers study many online systems, including social networks. If this kind of FBI attack by university proxy is accepted, no one will have meaningful Fourth Amendment protections online, and everyone is at risk. We, says Tor, teach law enforcement agents that they can use Tor to do their investigations ethically, and we support such use of Tor. But the mere veneer of a law enforcement investigation cannot justify wholesale invasion of people's privacy, and certainly cannot give it the color of legitimate research. Whatever academic security research should be in the 21st century, it certainly does not include experiments for pay that indiscriminately endanger strangers without their knowledge or consent.
Right on, Matt.
Yep. And then Matt Green, our cryptographer at Johns Hopkins, writes on research ethics, was the title, Why Tor Attack Matters. He says, you might, and I snipped the first couple paragraphs because they were sort of introduction that our listeners don't need. He said, you might wonder why this is important. After all, the crimes we're talking about are pretty disturbing. One defendant is accused of possessing child pornography, and if the allegations are true, the other was a staff member on Silk Road 2.0. If CMU really did conduct Tor de-anonymization research for the benefit of the FBI, the people they identified were allegedly not doing the nicest things. It's hard to feel particularly sympathetic, except for one small detail, writes Matthew. There's no reason to believe that the defendants were the only people affected. If the details of the attack are as we understand them, a group of academic researchers deliberately took control of a significant portion of the Tor network. Without oversight from the university's research board, they exploited a vulnerability in the Tor protocol to conduct a traffic confirmation attack, which allowed them to identify Tor client IP addresses and hidden services. They ran this attack for 5 months and potentially de-anonymized thousands, probably more really, of users. Users who depend on Tor to protect them from serious harm. While most of the computer science researchers I know are fundamentally ethical people, as a community we have a blind spot when it comes to the ethical issues in our field. There's a view in our community that institutional review boards are for medical researchers, and we've somehow been accidentally caught up in machinery that wasn't meant for us. And I get this. IRBs are unpleasant to work with. Sometimes the machinery is wrong. But there's also a view that computer security research can't really hurt people. So there's no real reason for that sort of ethical oversight machinery in the first place. This is dead wrong. And if we want to be taken seriously as a mature field, we need to do something about it. We may need different machinery, but we need something. That something begins with the understanding that active attacks that affect vulnerable users can be dangerous and should never be conducted without rigorous oversight, if they must be conducted at all. It begins with the idea that universities should have uniform procedures for both faculty, researchers, and quasi-government organizations like CERT, if they live under the same roof. It begins with CERT and CMU explaining what went on with their research rather than treating it like an embarrassment to be swept under the rug. Most importantly, it begins with researchers looking beyond their own research practices. So far, the response to the Tor news has been a big shrug. It's wonderful that most of our community is responsible, but none of that matters if we look the other way when others in our community fail to act responsibly. And it's worth mentioning also that there was a planned presentation at Black Hat of this, which was quietly pulled from the calendar.
Yeah, they might have been stormed. Well, and somebody, I think Dallas in the chat room said, well, yeah, but who suffered from this? As Matthew Green points out, everybody who was using Tor during that period of time, which was like 6 months, right, was potentially de-anonymized. Right. Not just the criminals.
Right. It's important to understand, for example, why we have a constitutional protection against unreasonable search and seizure, why there must be reasonable suspicion that can be demonstrated to a court in order to generate a search warrant, which then empowers law enforcement to essentially breach one's sanctity, one's privacy for searching. And of course, this came from England when, the king's men could just walk into anyone's home anytime they wanted and do anything they wanted. When we set up the United States, we said, no, we're not going to have it that way. And so this is something that, we have it because it's controversial, but I think it's one of the strengths that the Constitution provides. And so, I love this notion, and I think it was Snowden who said, when he was speaking about free speech, just because I have nothing to say that requires protection doesn't mean that free speech isn't valuable. So, these are interesting issues. And of course, this is all about encryption, comes into this same argument deeply.
Was it CMU's own exit nodes that were compromised, or they used an exploit, didn't they, to compromise others as well? I can't remember.
I don't remember. What I remember seeing is that they set up they talked about a cost
kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they talked about a cost of, in one instance, I saw $3,000 quoted in the Black Hat presentation. I saw $50,000 of expense elsewhere.
They got $1 million grant.
Exactly. They made money on this sucker. They made some money.
So it's also an insult to the taxpayers.
So I think they set up a lot of their own exit nodes and then, got those to be used. They may have been cloud-based rather than physical, because you can do that now. And then they monitored the traffic and then built an inference engine to infer the incoming and outgoing traffic and used it to de-anonymize. And as we've talked about Tor de-anonymization from time to time, because it's a fascinating topic sort of in security theory and privacy theory. So, again, this is the kind of thing that has to happen. I'm glad it's gotten a lot of attention, and people will get slapped, and I imagine that there will be consequences in terms, exactly along the lines that Matthew suggests, which is it in the same way that researchers have to get their studies, medical researchers have to get their studies approved by medical oversight boards. And I've been reading a lot of medical research in the last decade, and have I developed a new empathy for rats and mice. But they really are just.
Come on, they don't get their blood taken any more than you do.
Oh no, it's the homogenizing of their brains, because when you want to determine what the neurochemical balances are. It's like, oh boy, but they do everything they say in an ethical fashion. It's like, well, okay. And of course, this always harkens back to Douglas Adams, who asserted that, in fact, mice are the way a multidimensional super being is actually testing us.
Manifests.
It's popping little mice into existence into R3 space, and the mice are running mazes, and we're thinking we're determining what they're doing, but in fact they're under the control of this other entity. It's like, okay, Douglas. Yeah. So, interesting report from French and German researchers who decided to tackle this growing concern of the Internet of Things and the firmware in the embedded firmware in devices, routers, VoIPs, cable modems, webcams. They collected all of the firmware they could find from 54 different vendors, 1,925 different BIOSes. So just short of 2,000 firmware images spanning devices produced by 54 different vendors. They then set up a cloud-based, basically emulation system based on Ubuntu Linux and QEMU to provide the hardware emulation layer. And they did software emulation of the chips running the firmware. So they essentially set up a virtual cloud-based lab and then applied both static and dynamic analysis. And we've, of course, recently been talking about that relative to the iOS App Store stuff, both looking at the code statically and running the code actively. And then they also brought in both their own technology and existing known exploit kits, Metasploit, Nessus, and so forth, all that we've talked about in the past, and applied all of these tools. What they found was important, critical, actually, vulnerabilities in 185 firmware images, which affected nearly a quarter of the vendors. They have, under responsible disclosure, they have contacted them all all of them that they've been able to, and notified them of the problems. So the report that's just out, it was titled "Automated Dynamic Firmware Analysis at Scale: A Case Study on Embedded Web Interfaces." And I think 99% of these had web interfaces. Many of them were running PHP behind the scenes because they themselves were running little versions of Linux. And they, in their report, and I've got, of course, the links in the show notes, they break out the percentage of which web servers were being used, what software packages were there, basically a complete analysis of the operating firmware that they discovered in 1,925 different instances of turnkey devices, and from about 25% of the vendors, they found 185 critical vulnerabilities right now in today's most recent versions of what's out there. So really interesting piece of work. The concern is we're seeing this explosion of Internet of Things. Who's responsible for keeping them secure? How do we do this? And what these guys have demonstrated is it is feasible to we don't know that they found them all, but it's certainly better than nothing. They found 185 important problems, across devices from 54 different vendors. So, yay. And cool that we're able to do this at scale, because it means that there could be a facility where firmware is sort of dropped into a big pot as it comes out, and something runs it in a virtual environment and pounds on it and performs some sort of verification to increase the chance, again, not perfectly, but better than nothing, that if there's a problem that we know about, sort of a type of problem that we know about, we can make sure this particular instance doesn't have it. Oh, and this one. So a company named iPower Technologies was asked to create a cloud-based facility for uploading video from police body cameras to make it more convenient to manage and track and handle police body cam video. They purchased a couple of the cameras that the people who contracted with them were buying from a company called Martel Electronics. And upon connecting this brand new body cam to one of their systems, their AV immediately flashed up and warned them and shut down. They said, huh? What? Turns out the brand new body cams being sold by Martel Electronics, this known as the VidShield body-worn police camera, were infected with our old friend, the Conficker worm. This one in particular, Conficker B. Remember, it ranges A through E. We haven't talked about Conficker for years, but it was at one point very prevalent. It was the first worm that we saw that was doing dynamic DNS generation, where it used an algorithm to algorithmically create DNS domain names so that in the future it would know what a possible DNS domain would be, where it could find its command and control server. And this made it very difficult to track because, first of all, it generated like 50, and investigators who caught it and then reverse engineered it had to preemptively register 50 DNS domains, and then the next day there would be another 50, and then another 50, and another 50. And then it would choose one, or it would try them all, and one of them would actually have the command and control server on it. Anyway, we talked about this at length years ago. So basically, what this means is that this VidShield police-worn body camera, or something about the manufacturing process, is pre-infecting these with this old-school malware. Now, I went to this company's site, and I was gratified to find out that they are in stock now and offer free shipping.
Oh, good. Well,
so you can get Conficker B.
Worms have never been more affordable.
As part of the deal. Yes, but you must call for pricing. You always know they're gonna hit you hard when you have to have somebody on the phone before they'll tell you what this thing costs.
Yeah.
It does, however, have a 5-star rating and 8 product reviews. Their site says the VidShield police body video camera not only records in high definition, but it also, they said, shots, I guess they mean shoots, 12 megapixel still images, equivalent to the best digital cameras in the world.
Not really, no.
I know. I knew you were going to. When I read this, I thought, oh, Leo will have a comment about that one.
Yeah.
The VidShield has the time date stamp embedded into the video and photos that cannot be tampered with, making it perfect for evidence. And it goes on and on and on. I won't bother anybody with it, but I got a kick out of it. What was interesting was it was like, okay, yeah, so what? Well, Dan Gooden, writing for Ars Technica, I think, put it perfectly. He wrote, alternatively, known as Down-Up, Down-A-Dup, and Kedo, Conficker took hold in late 2008, a few days after Microsoft issued an emergency patch for a Windows vulnerability that allows self-replicating exploits. Within a few months, Conficker had enslaved as many as 15 million Windows PCs. Its sprawling botnet of infected machines eluded the vigorous takedown efforts of the Conficker Working Group, which was made up of Microsoft and more than a dozen partners in the security and domain registration industries. Conficker was especially hard to contain, writes Dan, because it used a variety of advanced methods to self-propagate, including exploiting weaknesses in the Windows Auto Start feature when users inserted USB drives into their computers. The malware also generated hundreds of pseudo-random domain names each day that infected machines could contact to receive new instructions. The scheme allowed the botnet to survive, even when old domain names were turned over to the working group. There are at least 5 significant variations of Conficker that are denoted with the letters A through E. And finally, he says, a report that police cameras are shipping with Conficker B pre-installed is testament to the worm's relentlessness. It's also troubling because the cameras can be crucial in criminal trials. If an attorney can prove that a camera is infected with malware, it's plausible that the vulnerability could be grounds for the video it generated to be thrown out of court, or at least to create reasonable doubt in the minds of jurors. Infected cameras can also infect and badly bog down the networks of police forces, some of which still use outdated computers and ineffective security measures.
Yeah, so you wonder how they got on there, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when iPower discovered this, they posted this, they uploaded it to VirusTotal, and it was even today. I mean, it may be so old that it's coming around again because it was only detected by 40 out of 54 of the total detectors. And interestingly, Malwarebytes and McAfee were among those that did not detect it. So if the police station were using McAfee or Malwarebytes, that body cam and, for example, an XP that didn't have patches installed for like forever. I mean, it's got to be a really old machine for that, to still happen. But as Dan notes, can't happen. But even if it weren't, the fact that it was being infected, the fact that that's just, a reasonable doubt could be made that, wait a minute, you're saying that you have to have chain of custody.
Yeah. Whoops.
But if you got malware in there, that
chain of custody,
all bets are off.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet you on The Good Wife they'd jump right on that one.
So, WhatsApp. Of course, it's one of the most famous, maybe now the most famous messaging platform. About 800 million users are using it. A bunch of researchers decided they wanted to take a close look at a new feature that had recently been added. So they put together a report, and in their little abstract, they said, WhatsApp is a widely adopted mobile messaging application. Recently, a calling feature was added to the application, and no comprehensive digital forensic analysis has been performed with regard to this feature at the time of writing this paper. In this work, we describe how we were able to decrypt the network traffic and obtain forensic artifacts that relate to this new calling feature, which include the WhatsApp phone numbers, the WhatsApp server IPs, the audio codec in used, are in use, the call duration, the phone numbers, and call termination. In this, and then they say, we explain the methods and tools we use to decrypt the traffic, as well as thoroughly elaborate on our findings with respect to the WhatsApp signaling messages. Furthermore, we also provide the community with a tool that helps in the visualization of the WhatsApp protocol messages. Now, it's important to note that the communication keys were not retrieved, but they speculate in their paper that they were present and that further reverse engineering and analysis may have produced additional revelations. So at the very least, the current instance of WhatsApp is trying to encrypt its metadata, and these guys cracked it, meaning that, and I saw somewhere else, but I didn't run it down, that this had something to do with a ubiquitous use of a repeating public key. That is, there was some public key encryption, but the same one was used. And so as a consequence, the weakness of metadata protection in WhatsApp, there is a weakness which is present that essentially cracks the metadata encryption. And then, of course, the question is, could this be known, or who knows it, and where is it known? And if we're relying on obscurity, then, as these guys note, we didn't fully reverse engineer the app. We don't know what else is in the metadata, but in the metadata that we decrypted, we did find stuff that users are presuming that they're being protected from, and we know they're not. So, again, the fact that it's popular and that it's using encryption really doesn't tell us anything. It's this stuff is complicated, and in fact, it's because it's so complicated that I'm worried about the future of encryption relative to legislation, because, boy, it is hard to explain things to people that really don't want to understand them. Okay, piece of hardware note. I've talked several times about pfSense and about the Socorus hardware that I like, a really great company based in Scotts Valley, California. I was aware of an alternative and sort of lost track of it. Then somebody tweeted to me the platform they use, which is way less expensive. And I thought, oh, good, I'm glad I found it. And that fell through the cracks too. So the second time somebody said, hey, Steve, I use these. They're great. I said, oh, that's the one. I'm not going to lose it again. So pcengines.ch. Sorry, I didn't pronounce that very well. .ch. pcengines.ch. These guys are a very affordable, for a do-it-yourself person, multi-NIC, because you need 2 or 3, and like they have 3 NICs, so you could have a WAN, a LAN, and a DMZ. Just beautiful little pfSense compatible hardware platforms where, for example, the case costs $10 rather than $125, and the board itself is $100, that kind of thing. So for anyone who is interested in perhaps rolling their own hardware gateway, pcengines.ch is a great site. I don't have any particular hardware there. You can poke around, see what fits your budget and so forth. But and I'm glad that. Thank you everybody for tweeting this to me several times. I'm sorry it took several times, but this is the hardware that I was aware of before. It's good stuff, and it's not overkill. The Socorus is sort of the high end approach. This is completely adequate. And there, Leo has a picture of it on the screen showing a compact flash card. So you can boot from compact flash, multiple NICs, a range of speeds and options. Just really nice, very inexpensive, very affordable hardware.
Small, right? I mean, these look pretty compact. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's a tiny little thing,
what
like
kind of case?
maybe $5.
Does it come with a case, or you just?
I think it's $10 for a case.
Oh, nice.
So they've got one.
It almost looks like a Raspberry Pi. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's sort of a high-end multi-NIC because you need multiple NICs because you want to do.
Ethernets, yeah.
Yep. So that you're able to have a WAN and a LAN, but that's the kind of thing you would load whatever your of choice gateway software is, pfSense or whatever.
Yeah, and not expensive. That's great.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, my friend, iPad Pro.
Ah, you got yours.
Miscellany.
You didn't get a pencil, though, right? Nobody had those. Yeah.
Yep, I did not. So I set the alarm for midnight on Wednesday night. Got up at midnight. Had not updated. I waited till about 12:30. Till about 12:15, and it was still not showing. So I thought, okay, well, and of course the 11:11 was just a rumor anyway. So we didn't. There was no.
Oh no, Apple did release a press release today before.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
so,
by then it was real. Yeah.
So I thought, well, just on the off chance. So I set my alarm to 1 a.m. I got up. I was reawakened at 1 a.m. Hit refresh, and the first time the site didn't come up. So that got my attention.
Yeah.
Yes. So I hit it again, and I got the page. Immediately pushed my order through and was told it would be 2 business days delivery, but as it turned out, it was the next day.
Oh, nice.
So
yeah.
I was very pleased. I got it immediately. And as you noted, the pencil is, I was told, 1 to 2 weeks out. I haven't looked recently, looked back to see if there's an update. I heard you quote a specific date, so maybe I have one too.
Yeah, they told me December 7th or through 10th, but let me check just to see if it's been updated.
I did look. I did check the site later that day, and I saw that the 1 to 2 business days had gone to 5 to 7 for the iPad Pro. Yeah. So immediately, they got backlogged. But I was glad to have mine right away.
Yeah. So
here's the good. The good, it is fast. It's got a more powerful processor.
Very fast. Yeah, noticeably so.
One of the things that I appreciate about the newer keyboard that I had forgotten how annoying it is, but on the current keyboard, that is on the smaller pad keyboards, and that is less shifting. That is, the newer keyboard gives you the number rows along the top dedicated, so you don't have to shift in order to get a number. And just, it's nice to have that. Yes, the sound is amazing. 4 speakers built in, and if you've seen the iFixit teardown, they've got like 4 large resonant chambers. A lot of space was given to those speakers, so which I thought was interesting. And as you have noted, watching video with the screen and sound is great.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm out of good.
Uh-oh.
The bad. It's too big.
It's really big, isn't it?
It really is. And in fact, my body's muscle mass has increased. So it's physically cumbersome. It's physically awkward. I lived with it for almost a week. And it is I took it with me. So I went, when I went out, I brought it with me. The second time I went out, I brought a backup power supply because this thing, it does not have a battery life equal to the pad.
That's not my experience. I hope you didn't get a lemon.
No. If it's now, maybe you don't have it turned up bright because I was outside on a patio in the shade, but I was running it and that makes a huge difference. This is a large screen.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a lot of screen to light up. What that means is that it's going, and we know that backlighting is where a lot of the power goes. If it's turned up full brightness because you're in an outdoor setting in the shade, it actually runs hot, and it drains the battery faster than power can be put in. It consumes power at that rate. So that I've got something giving it 10 watts of 2.1 amp power, and at full brightness I'm losing ground while it's plugged into power. That's how much power the thing uses. But at 50% brightness, which is certainly usable indoors, then it's fine. It's funny because in my notes of annoyance, I had the things that you've already mentioned, Leo. For example, it's really annoying that they have not used the screen well.
Yeah.
Like the icons. They're like spaced apart.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, I've got like
There's
8
a lot
pages.
more room here, guys. You could use that. Yeah.
I've got 8 pages of scrolling using lots of folders. It's like, why? I would like to have twice as many icons on the screen.
Yeah.
And I would like to have a whole bunch more in my dock down at the bottom too, because those are the things
There's
I
lots
use
of
all
room.
the time.
Yeah.
It's like, and the apps themselves, Mail, for example, you get a little column of text in the middle of the screen.
Right.
It doesn't use the space.
Yeah.
Now, the web browser uses the space because, of course, the web is mature about properly using the resolution it has. But what this really represents, I think, is a sad first shot. I hope they fix it in the future, but it's just, yeah. That's what I meant when I said the screen is too big, and they have not utilized the space well. So also the big keyboard. The problem is it's too big for one finger typing. You end up, you're going to get some new form of carpal tunnel. Your arm gets exhausted moving back and forth a foot in order to go from one side of the keyboard to the other. It's just huge.
Yeah.
So, and the sound effect volume is very low. I've never been able to, it kind of whispers, even though I've got the volume turned all the way up. It doesn't make sound effects loud for me. So, and finally, just a generic annoyance with iOS is that iOS appears to be collapsing. I'm finding it more and more buggy. The web portal login often fails. It says I've got a connection. Nothing.
The captured portal functionality. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I'll have to, if I reboot the machine, then it works perfectly. It runs for a while. I'm seeing Safari pages where when you scroll up, the bottom is blank. And if I force close Safari and then just reopen it, then it redisplays that page correctly. And things are locking up and hanging. So I'm disappointed that it's showing its age. Now, in fairness, I restored my regular iPad. I backed up my regular size iPad and restored it to the big one so that I didn't have to do all the setup from scratch. So maybe there's some age or some cruft or some app collision or something which I replicated through the backup and restore. I may at some point just wipe my most used pad and start over again. I think that the sidebar should have its own MRU, that is its own most recently used list, because the things you do with a sidebar tend to be different than what you do with the main screen, and it'd be nice if they weren't sharing the same MRU. I think that would be a nice thing to say. But and I did learn a nice trick, which is to close the sidebar. You don't have to start at the edge of it and push right, which makes no sense really, because while you're using the sidebar, the whole rest of the screen on the left is grayed out. So you just swipe anywhere you want to the right to close it. But anyway, here's the final piece, and that is today when I ran out to grab a bite, I fell back to my original pad, I was so much happier.
Yeah, it's much more. I don't think you'd want to travel around too much with the Pro.
You can't.
It's too big. Yeah.
No, so I'm super interested in the pencil experience. I'm like you, I'm not an artistic drawer, but I'm a diagrammer. And just the other day, I was drawing a circuit diagram with my finger, and it was just it was annoying. I mean, I had the Pro. I was using Dan Brickland's note-taking app, which is a great tool for drawing. But it was just, I thought, wow, if I had the pencil, these schematics would look so much better. So I'm hopeful for that. My life will be complete if the next small pad has pencil functionality. I don't know if they'll do it, but that's what I want. If the 10-inch pad could be compatible with the pencil, my life is complete.
Yeah, we'll see. As Renee Ritchie has pointed out, there's it's almost like two different devices, because in order to do the pencil and the touch, you can't. There's other things you can't. I mean, it's tough. So yeah, I suspect Apple's going to make a big distinction, and they're not ever going to do a pencil for the smaller ones.
Or they could not ever give the smaller pad the 3D touch, and give it the stylus instead.
They might do that. Yeah. We'll see.
I'm kind of feeling that my fingers are just too big to touch on things.
Yeah, you want the pencil, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see using the pencil as a beautiful, fine tip, just button presser, just going tick 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 in order to do things with greater accuracy than with fingers.
Well, that's what I do with the Microsoft Surface Book, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah. So on Twit, I loved the round table of blank expressions when you mentioned that Gene Amdahl had died.
Oh, that made me sad.
It was very sad. Of course, you and I know Gene, and a lot of our older listeners will remember Amdahl. He was at IBM, and then he left to build high-performance IBM clones, essentially, was his business. And he was a pioneer at the high end of the mainframe computer business for years, and he died last week at the age of 92. And then when all of the screens around you, because you had Skyped in people, they were just silent. Yeah. And then and you noticed nobody was saying anything, and you said, "You people don't know who Gene Amdahl was," and they're like, "No." Yeah. And then you said, "Osborne? Anyone?" And they're like, no Osborne either. And there were a couple other earlier industry pioneers, and I thought, wow. And then my favorite anecdote from that was, I don't remember where it came from, but it was something where some little toddler ran over. Her father had a 3.5-inch diskette, and of course I have drawers full of them.
There you go.
So because I think you had, was it on?
Was on the new screensavers? We had a guy who's
on Saturday,
who continues to sell floppy disks at floppydisk.com.
Anyway, I loved the anecdote of someone's daughter saying, "Daddy, you 3D printed the save icon." I thought, isn't that perfect?
It's got.
She's never seen a floppy.
No,
she doesn't know what the save icon represents.
Yeah.
So she sees one in real life and thinks, "Oh, look, the save icon's been 3D printed." I love that.
So funny.
Okay, so I know that my puzzle recommendations have been a huge hit among our listeners. People love the things that I find that I love. This is old, but I've never mentioned it before. And if anyone has liked anything that I have recommended, Auralux.
I'm downloading it right now.
Auralux.
Okay.
Auralux. It is available for iOS, iPhone, and iPad, and Android. And apparently it hails from the PC era. So, or there is a PC version. I get the sense that these were ports from that. So the PC version predated it. So even Paul Thurrott can use Auralux.
He might remember this. Is that
and
it?
Leo,
There's like planets and...
Okay, so it is wonderful. It's sort of planetary. You say it starts off with two sort of different objects, kind of orbs, and each of them generate new items, dots. They sort of pulse, and they generate them at a certain rate, and so they begin to populate gravitationally. And then by swiping, you can send you're able to like corral and send a bunch of them off on a mission to go and neutralize other ones. Anyway, from their own description, they said Auralux, formerly Aurora, is an abstract, essentialized, and simplified real-time strategy game. You have only one type of unit to command and only one type of order to give those units. You and your automated opponents start the game with equal resources. Quick reflexes will get you nowhere. The only path to victory is through strategy. Auralux features a slow, floating feel and, they say, gorgeous, minimalistic graphics. The entire world pulses to a rhythm of ambient music, and the player's actions evoke sounds that smoothly coalesce into melody. This game is meant to provide a relaxing, cerebral experience. Every action has its reaction, and every option has its costs. Auralux is a game in which your choices matter. And I will tell you, it is one of my all-time favorites. I thought of it when you were talking about needing something for the iPad Pro.
Yeah, this is nice.
And, oh, boy, let me tell you, it's just meditative. It's one of those where it starts out simple. It's free, by the way. I think you have to pay to unlock additional levels, so you can optionally choose to if you get addicted to it. But it's exactly what you want, because you start out not really understanding it, so you learn incrementally as you see how things work. You then you adapt your strategy. Anyway, there's no risk for me overselling this. Our listeners who don't already know about it are going to be cursing me a month from now because it has consumed so much of their life.
I love this. It's musical.
It is musical, strategic. It's fascinating. I could just go on for an hour like Andy Anatko on something that he loves. In this case, I won't. But because I've said enough. Auralux, get it. It's free, iOS and Android and PC. And good luck with your social relationships.
This is beautiful.
It's a keeper, Leo.
Yeah.
It's just so great. And every time that you can see everything throbbing, if you look, 2 new little dots are produced for every throb. And so that's where the dots are coming from. And then, but if enough dots can converge on sort of that thing acting like a black hole, then it grows in size, and then it produces 3 dots every iteration. If it grows again, then it produces 4 dots. That way, so you want to make yours bigger, because then the rate of dot production increases. And you want to keep your adversaries from getting theirs to be bigger.
Right.
So to keep their rate of dot production low. And then you want to send fleets of dots off to attack the other guys. And so you're able to like circle a bunch and then tell them where to go. And so they sail off on that mission autonomously while you then do things. Anyway, it's just it's
fun.
So wonderful.
It's fun. I'm liking it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm liking it.
So, and that's the way you start. You just start by screwing around, and you're always able to go back and redo an earlier level, or you'll see that you lose, and you notice the way you lose, and then you try it again. No, I mean, it's the reward and pain system that's built in. It's absolutely amazing. In fact, now I'm wanting to play it. So
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up this show. We got stuff to do here.
Okay, so I did want to revisit Spectre, just to note that it has broken two Guinness World Records. And quoting from IMDb, that last time I looked, it gave it a 7.3, whereas Skyfall, which people seem to like more, I saw the comments that your podcasts have had. I think it must have been on Twit maybe, or maybe it was something else. Skyfall gets a 7.8. So the world seems to think it was, in fact, better than Spectre at 7.3. But Movies.com writes of the two Guinness World Records, the latest James Bond movie has broken a few box office records since its release, including the one for biggest opening of all time in the UK. But Spectre, which also topped the box offices in the U.S. over the weekend, has achieved some other feats that don't have to do with theatrical performance. The movie officially features the largest film stunt explosion in history, as acknowledged by Guinness World Records. And I'll skip talking about that because I don't want to give anything away, except that they use 68.47 tons of TNT equivalent, which was the result of detonating 8,418 liters of kerosene with 33 kilograms of powder explosives that lasted over 7.5 seconds. And I will say it was an amazing explosion. And you could tell this was not a model. This was not some cheesy, we're going to cut corners. This was, they blew the crap out of something really big. Anyway, so yes, the world's record for the biggest explosion. For what it's worth, it did also make box office history with the biggest openings in the Netherlands, Finway, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. So, it's not a crappy film. I liked it. I thought it did drag in places. I mean, if I wanted to be critical, I could find some criticism, but, I don't. It's Bond. So it's a fun movie. Okay. Well, last, and then we'll get on to seriousness here. I talked years ago about a series on, I guess it's on CBS. I hope it's on CBS because I just said it is. The Good Wife. And I remember when other people were telling me about it, but it was like, what? The Good Wife? That doesn't sound like something that I'm going to be interested in. How many explosions is it going to have? How many phaser beams and teleportation and stuff? 0. So, like, how does a good wife, okay, what? But finally, I was moved to try, and I fell in love. I know that you have started it and are also enjoying it. For what it's worth, it is a great series. It does not take itself too seriously. It's now in its 7th season. So for people who like to binge, there's plenty to binge on. I'm bringing it up because last Sunday's episode, which was titled Driven, and that's season 7, episode 7, last Sunday, was about autonomous vehicles. And so here's what I think. If any of our listeners who were curious wanted to get a taste, watch last Sunday's episode titled Driven, episode 7, season 7. It stands alone. You won't know any of the backstory. You won't know who the characters are, but I think anyone would enjoy it. Because it does involve some fun characters and autonomous vehicle problems in an interesting way. And my guess is you will end up thinking, okay, I got to know what's going on. So start with season 1, and you've got lots of enjoyable time ahead of you. So if I can get more people addicted to it, I think that would be a good thing. And we have not yet said while we're recording, Leo, that you fell in love with
Fargo, yeah.
Fargo.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Great show. Love that show.
You and Lisa blew through the first season.
Yeah, 1 week to watch the whole thing, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oofta.
You just
and then you start talking like this all the time.
Okay.
You know who's really good in that there? He's that Martin guy, The Hobbit. He's really good in that. But the best is Billy Bob Thornton.
Well, Billy Bob.
Oh,
plays
Billy Bob.
Really good evil
bad
guy.
Yes. Oh, sure. Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. So I had recommended it, but it was after we stopped recording last week where you suddenly realized we hadn't closed the loop on that, and you said, "Oh my God!" And
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
definitely. It's violent, ultra violent, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Actually, this new season's even worse.
Yeah. If you're not, and as I described it, it's a little Tarantino-esque.
Yeah.
In terms of being a little over the top. So if that just turns you off, I completely understand. But if you don't mind it, it's art. It's artistry. And I hate to use that as a segue to Spinrite.
No. Total artist.
But I did receive there's another good lesson here. Simon, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Gutierre, I guess, Guettier. Sorry, Simon. Thank you for the testimonial. He wrote this yesterday. He's in Waddesdon Village, Buckinghamshire, or is it it's Buckinghamshire. Buckinghamshire. Okay, I can't do it.
And by the way, it's Guinness Book of World Records, just like the beer.
What did I say?
Guineas.
Oh.
Just, as long as I'm correcting you, I'm going to get all in one swell.
Thank you.
Sorry about
Guinness.
that. Guinness. Yes.
Guinness. He's obviously in the UK, in England. Yes. So his subject was Spinrite blows away the storm that blew away my PC. He said, "Hi, Steve. This morning I booted my desktop PC, and to my alarm, it was behaving monstrously at startup. Basically, just being incredibly sluggish. Desktop icons wouldn't appear at all. Browser launch took over 5 minutes. Nothing worked at all. I was puzzled because the day before I'd done a complete fresh install of Windows, and all appeared fine then. When I powered down the PC the night before, all had been fine. Then I remembered that the day before, my village had suffered some power glitches. I live in the small village of Waddesdon near Oxford in the UK. We'd had severe storms, and believe it or not, mains power to the village is at least in part still delivered by overhead power lines. In storms, the lines get whacked by trees and outages are common. The day before, there were 2 outages and 2 instances where the mains voltage dipped alarmingly for 1 to 2 seconds each time. My PC was on at the time, though I wasn't sitting at it. Could this be the cause of the dreadful slowdown in performance? Let's try Spinrite, I thought. My PC has a 256 gigabyte SSD as the operating system drive and a large 2 terabyte standard hard drive which serves for data. I ran Spinrite at level 2 on the SSD. No errors. At this point, I almost stopped, thinking that the other 2 terabyte drive was not really mission critical and shouldn't really affect performance. But what the hell? I did another level 2 check, which took quite a bit longer. Because it's 2 terabytes as opposed to a quarter terabyte. I was watching those little blue squares from time to time, no greens or reds. But at one point, I did notice that for a while, SpinRite took ages before it would put a blue square up. For several squares in a row, perhaps 10. Anyway, it finished. All normal, no green or red indications, meaning overt recovery or lack of recovery. I wasn't terribly convinced that I'd found the problem, as no errors were reported. So you can imagine my surprise on rebooting to find that all was well again and the PC behaved just as it should. This is the second time SpinRite has rescued me. I managed to rescue a friend's badly corrupted drive when she had many irreplaceable photos of her father who had passed away. So I reckon I've had my money's worth. I look forward to the new version. With best wishes, Simon Goutier. I hope I'm... Oh, there it is. Gettier. Simon Gettier. Thank you for the pronunciation, Simon. Sorry it was too late. Simon Gettier. And thanks for sharing your SpinRite recovery. I mean, this is something that I've talked about before where what happened was SpinRite showed the drive, you got problems here, buddy. And so it wasn't necessary to force recovery. It wasn't necessary to guess at the data in the sector. It wasn't necessary to partially recover it. It just said to the drive, look, it just basically rubbed it in its face. Fix this. Finally, the drive said, okay, and swapped the sector out. Or maybe SpinRite was able to get a good read, and then it rewrote it. Since there wasn't anything wrong with that spot, it was caused by a power failure. It was just miswritten. So in reading it, finally getting it read, and then rewriting it, it was able to then be read without any trouble. So again, no frank recovery or failure, but we did fix the problem. And that's what SpinRite always does by the time it gets through.
We are going to talk about encryption, and of course, in the light of what happened in France over the weekend, there have been calls. I'm already seeing it on CNN, and not a surprise. They have found the terrorists' cell phones. What's your bet that it will be an Apple phone, and then there'll be calls for Apple to make the stop putting strong encryption in your phones, and on and on. We'll talk about that. Law enforcement and encryption next. But first, let me talk about something a little more restful. Sheets. Boll and Branch sheets. The softest. I slept on my Boll and Branch last night. Actually, I've been sleeping on them all week. I love them. The softest, lusciousest, if that's a word, most luxurious sheets you'll ever try. Boll and Branch. Boll is in cotton boll, B-O-L-L, and branch.com. First of all, I think for a long time this was a very well-known department. You get in the department store. They decided to sell direct, eliminating that 800% department store markup. So these sheets, you might have seen them for thousands of dollars at your department store now, are much more affordable. They're made entirely of organic, fair trade cotton. They're very nice sheets. They are so soft. 3 U.S. presidents sleep on Boll and Branch sheets. That kind of gives you some idea. We're not talking thread count here. I mean, I have, I don't know what they are. My other sheets are like 1,000 or something. They were $1,500 for the sheets, for a sheet. These are as dense a weave and as soft a sheet. They're softer. They're incredible. There's a variety of collections. By the way, a great gift. They have a baby collection now, which means this would be great for a baby shower because they come in beautiful boxes. They're beribboned. They're gift wrapped already. You're going to love these sheets so much. In fact, they know it. So they're going to let you try them risk-free for 30 nights. They say, let's have a 30-night stand. And if you order right now, $50 off a set of sheets plus free shipping. But you have to use the offer code SECURITYNOW. So try it. I'm telling you. In 30 days, if you don't like it, that's fine. But you will. In fact, what I know will happen is what happened to me. You'll order more. Boll BOLL and branch.com. You know, I've had sheets, got them on Amazon, that were so prickly and stiff. I washed them like 3 times, still too prickly, 4 times. I couldn't get these to be soft. These are soft out of the box. Washed them once, and I love them. Ultra soft, 100% organic, fair trade cotton. They're beautifully made, and they're so comfortable. Boll and Branch, BOLL and BRANCH.com. And don't forget $50 off your set when you use the offer code Security Now. Security Now. When I got the box, I thought, what is this? Is this a belated wedding gift?
You said it was enribboned.
Be-ribboned, yes.
Or be-ribboned. Be-ribboned.
You know what? I think I took a picture. I'll find the picture. It's beautiful. I took a picture and said, I don't know who this is. Is this from my Aunt, Mary? Who is this? And then I realized, oh, that's the Boll and Branch sheets. They're so nice. You will love them. Let me see. I think I have I took a picture of the box because I was like, I don't know who these are from, but I gotta find out. They'd be perfect for a baby shower. I have to go back. I got them a while ago, before they were an advertiser, and I just love them. Here it is.
Did we have 2 sponsors today or 3?
Yeah, that was the 2 right there.
Oh, okay.
So
good.
you see, be-ribboned. Be-ribboned.
Oh, look at that! Nice.
I'm not kidding you. That's the box they come in.
Nice.
You don't have to do any gift wrapping. This would be an incredible gift. All right, moving on. We have other things to talk about.
So, okay, our listeners understand the issues because we've been discussing this for a while. And of course, years ago, I aborted my work on CryptoLink because this was in the air, and I thought, I would hate for encryption to be outlawed after I invested years of my time creating something that I intended to have as a commercial product. Something that I spend a day or 2 on that's freeware, or even the DNS benchmark that I spent months on, but I never intended to sell it. It would really throw my plans off. So. Yeah. And as it turns out, there was lots of life left in SpinRite anyway, so I'm glad for what it's worth this happened. Although, I wish I had CryptoLink too, except that we're still not sure what's going to happen with encryption. So, as we've said at the top of the show and just before the sponsor announcement, Leo, not surprisingly, last week's attacks in Paris have stirred this up again, and anyone observing it, I think, objectively, would recognize that without evidence, all anyone has is speculation, and you have to be so careful in reporting. So, for example, here's a perfect example. And I don't mean to single out Ars Technica. They're needing to cover the news, and they're not doing it any differently than everybody else. But the details are important because the details are what leave impressions in people's minds. So Ars Technica of this wrote, and this is referring to a New York Times article that I excerpt a paragraph from next. But so Ars wrote, the investigation into last Friday's coordinated terrorist attacks has quickly turned up evidence that members of the Islamic State, ISIS, communicated with the attackers from Syria using encrypted communications, according to French officials.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not true. None of that is true.
No.
But there it is. They link to the New York Times article where the only thing it mentions is to say European officials said they believed the Paris attackers had used some kind of encrypted communication but offered no evidence.
Oh.
Okay? Even though ours said has quickly turned up evidence. And then, quoting a senior European counterterrorism official, New York Times wrote, the working assumption is that these guys were very security aware, and they assumed they would be under some level of observation and acted accordingly. This guy spoke on the condition of anonymity because he was discussing confidential information. Well, first of all, he didn't say anything. And so what we have is we have no information, but we're already blaming encryption because, if they were, they probably used it, because why wouldn't they? So, okay.
Which is true.
Now,
why wouldn't they?
Okay, right. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not evidence. So
it's speculation.
Okay. Yeah. So the New York Times, a different article, the New York Times wrote two, and I have links to them. This was, and this is well reported, but again, and this frames it well, but sort of with the same bias. It was titled "Encrypted Messaging Apps Face New Scrutiny Over Possible Role in Paris Attacks." So again, possible.
This is being fed to them by officials with an agenda.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So American and French officials say there is still no definitive evidence to back up their presumption that the terrorists who massacred, let's highlight that, 129 people in Paris used new, difficult-to-crack encryption technologies to organize the plot. So right off the bat, we're going to say that no one knows anything about how this was done, but we're going to write a whole story about how encrypted messaging apps are probably to blame. In the interviews, Obama administration officials say the Islamic State has used a range of encryption technologies over the past year and a half, many of which defy cracking by the National Security Agency. Other encryption technologies, the officials hint, are less secure. Oh, I'll get this. Other encryption technologies, like, the bad ones, the weak ones, like, paper, writing it down, maybe.
Email.
Other encryption technologies, the officials hint, are less secure than terrorist and criminal groups may believe. And clearly, they want to keep those adversaries guessing which ones the NSA has pierced. Oh, give me a break. Okay. First of all, unfortunately, these people are not stupid. And we have an open environment where we've got websites rating the security of encrypted apps with evidence. I mean, you don't have to just take their word for it. You can, certainly there are cryptographers who don't have the world's best interests at heart. Mathematicians. Anyway, they write, some of the most powerful technologies are free, easily available encryption apps with names like Signal, Wicker, and Telegram, which encode mobile messages from cell phones. Islamic State militants used Telegram 2 weeks ago to claim responsibility for the crash of the Russian jet in the Sinai Peninsula that killed 224 people, and used it again last week.
See, I told you Telegram was secure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes. They did it by sending emojis, a certain sequence of stickers.
Yeah.
Yeah, a plane and a bomb and a
we did it.
Explosion. They sent it, and then last week in Arabic, English, and French to broadcast responsibility for the Paris carnage. It is not yet clear whether they also used Telegram's secret messaging service to encrypt their private conversations. Okay, now, so again, reading this objectively, state officials would know if they used it but couldn't crack it. Instead, they don't know anything. So to say that, oh, well, maybe,
That's a guess.
it's like, yes,
right.
It's like, well, yeah, okay. Nonetheless, write the New York Times reporters, such end-to-end encryption technology is now so widespread that the attack has revived vitriolic arguments between American intelligence officials and Silicon Valley. Only weeks ago, the matter appeared settled, at least temporarily, with a decision by President Obama that it would be fruitless for the government to try to compel the technology companies to provide the keys to protected conversations and data. Apple has already made encryption technology a standard part of its iMessage service. Oh, and by the way, there is a site that ranks iMessage that on a scale where the most secure were listed on the left, then the next most secure, then the okay secure, the not so good, and the not secure. iMessage was in the middle as because, as I've said, Apple manages the keys, and that's the weakness of iMessage. And so you can't really trust it. Not absolutely. There are absolutely trustable solutions. And the problem is they're in the wind already. Their math, I was thinking of the bomb analogy where it takes expertise to make a bomb, and so but the bomb requires raw materials. And of course, we know that many raw materials, that the production and sales and shipping and tracking are being watched, because that's a tip-off to the idea that maybe these are going to be put together into something that goes boom. The problem is encryption isn't that way. Encryption has no raw materials that anyone can track or find. Its use has a footprint, so you can know that this looks like pseudo-random noise, and then that you either can or cannot get into it. But the point is, it's math. And so the strongest argument that I have, which I've actually used in talking to some aides of senators about this, who were trying to explain to their bosses months back, like I was contacted, Steve, how do we explain to my boss that isn't technical why he can't just pass a law to make this happen? And we spent a couple hours going over arguments, and the best one, I think, is it's too late. This stuff is just math, and the math is now known and published. And so all we would succeed in doing if we forced the legal organizations to weaken their crypto is then the bad guys would use illegal crypto. And I heard you mention on Twit talking about the again, another suspicion, although I just read that it maybe had been debunked, that maybe PlayStation 4 network had been used.
Yeah.
I don't know one way or the other, but that's a perfect example of, Apple and Google and anyone else offering strong crypto is forced to create backdoors, and then so they don't use it. The bad guys don't use it. They communicate during World of Warcraft instead.
Right.
Or they take a message and they encrypt it with strong crypto that the NSA cannot break, because that exists independent of services. All the services do is make it easier to use the crypto. But bad guys don't care how easy it is. Regular people care. Bad guys will go out of their way to use strong crypto that isn't easy. That's fine with them. And then they'll take this message and encode it using steganography in the low bits of an image that they post anywhere on the net. And now they have encrypted communications which no one can find. And if they did find it, they can't decrypt it. So anyway, this article continues just to say, but the speed of the encryption wave has touched off alarm among law enforcement and intelligence officials who say it significantly increases the chances that they will miss evidence of an impending attack. Again, you can argue exactly against that, as I just did, with as much strength. Prime Minister David Cameron of Britain threatened late last year to ban such technologies, although he soon backed down. France is threatening to insist on access, and if the French do, so will China, many fear, raising questions about whether the same technology used to track terrorist communications will be used to track dissidents as well. And then Michael Morrell, a former deputy director of the CIA, said, "I think this is going to open an entire new debate about security versus privacy." We have, in a sense, had a public debate. And he was interviewed just this past weekend on CBS's Face the Nation, where he said that debate was defined by Edward Snowden. Now we're going to have a new argument defined by what happened in Paris. So anyway, I won't go on with the rest of this because there's more if anyone's interested in the whole article in the show notes. But Matt Blaze was quoted. Matt Blaze, the again world-class cryptographer and signer of the various petitions and pleas to our government not to do anything wrong. By not to force this. Where is? Just always say. Security experts counter that such arguments ignore the fact that even end-to-end encrypted technology leaves a trail of metadata behind that can be used to parse who is talking to whom, when, and where. He says, quote, "Encryption is really good at making it difficult to hide the content of communications, but not good at hiding the presence of communications." Mr. Blaze also noted that the authorities can still read communications if they hack into the target's device or what security experts call the endpoint. He said, "All the encryption in the world doesn't help if the endpoint that holds the keys are compromised." So this idea that encryption makes terrorist communications go completely dark has a pretty big asterisk next to it. So then, of course, Bruce Schneier, famous cryptographer, his blog posting was titled "Paris Attacks Blamed on Strong Cryptography and Edward Snowden." And so he said, well, that didn't take long. And then he cites the Daily Dot that wrote, "As Paris reels from terrorist attacks that have claimed at least 128 lives, fierce blame for the carnage is being directed toward American whistleblower Edward Snowden and the spread of strong encryption catalyzed by his actions." And so then
That's
Bruce
not
wrote,
true.
I know, and he wrote, "Now the Paris attacks are being used as an excuse to demand backdoors." Then he said, "I was going to write a definitive refutation to the meme that it's all Snowden's fault, but Glenn Greenwald beat me to it."
Nailed it. Yeah.
And I'm not going to drag us through that, but I urge you could probably Google "exploiting emotions about Paris."
It's on the Intercept.
To blame,
Yeah.
Yes, the Intercept. "Exploiting emotions about Paris to blame Snowden, distract from actual culprits who empowered ISIS." It is a really good piece. He basically, and of course we know he's got a dog in the race. He's, he worked with Edward to publish this, but despite the fact that he has a view, doesn't mean he's wrong. And he reminds us of all the terrorist attacks which did occur, often perpetrated by people law enforcement already knew of and who had their eyes on before Snowden's revelations, going back through time. So it's not like we were catching them all before, and after Edward Snowden, now we're no longer able to catch them. And in fact, the FBI, I mean, the chief of police in New York, who's been so vocal about this, talks about thwarting 30 different attacks. I don't remember what the time frame was, but he says we're catching them and stopping them all the time. So it's like, yes, even with strong encryption, and even with after Snowden. And my argument is that encryption exists, it cannot be taken back, it's math, and that what we've really got with Apple and the various instant messaging is convenient strong encryption. And that if it is broken, the bad guys won't use it. All that will happen is that it risks weakening the convenient high volume use where it matters strong encryption by making it less than that. The bad guys will continue to use less convenient strong encryption, and will do it through encrypting least significant bits of photos that can't be cracked and can't even be found. So, I mean, Lord knows I'm not on their side, but I am on the side of sanity and not having our legislators make a big mistake that will not help law enforcement. It will not help them.
That's the bottom line. It won't make any difference, and it will in fact weaken encryption for everybody else.
Yes.
So I think that those are provable points, both of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Certainly from experience, anyway. Well, it's a shame, and I'm seeing CNN. You just watch this. I mean, it's just you could see it happening. But I don't think you have to ascribe nefarious motives to law enforcement, to American spy agencies or GCHQ in Britain or the French spy agencies. They want to protect the homeland. I think they're doing this with absolutely pure intent. But I hope they understand the issues.
Yes, I hope I didn't make it sound like.
Yeah. They're trying to do the best thing, but what they just don't understand the risks involved and the fact that it's not going to help you.
And also, it's been pointed out that no one has been able to show a single instance where decrypting communications actually did solve was the crucial piece of information. So there, I mean, it's one of those things that it seems logical. It would make sense, which is why it sells so well, and why headlines are so powerful, and why all the talking heads are saying it. And I mean, Barbara Boxer is running around saying that we have to get Silicon Valley under control, and it's like, no, it will not make a difference. It just won't.
It's gonna be hard with this drumbeat for Silicon Valley.
I think we're going to lose. I'll be surprised if we. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, we spent some podcasts demonstrating that it's not possible.
Right.
Things like valuable things like perfect forward secrecy cannot be used because perfect forward secrecy is continually changing the keys. And so you can't have perfect forward secrecy, which now everyone wants, if you're going to allow a captured, encrypted previous dialogue to be decrypted, because the keys are inherently ephemeral. So that would require somehow logging the keys. I mean, it just, when you, and this is the problem, is, no one wants to look at the actual details, and they assume that Silicon Valley is just dragging their heels.
Right.
Like Apple is selling security as a marketing vehicle, And so it's not that it cannot do it. It just chooses not to. It's like, no, it's, when you really get down to it, there was a great analysis that talked about, like, if you were going to do this on an Android phone, then, nothing prevents the bad guys from loading an Android app which is secure, which would be available on the black market, into their Android phone and using it, because nothing prevents it.
Yeah.
So if we were to really firmly outlaw encryption, well, first of all, is a backdoor feasible? And the problem is now all of the communications looks like random noise. So what does the NSA do? All of the communications looks like random noise. Do they have the ability to decrypt all of the communications in order to return it to plain text, in order to run it through their pattern recognition? I mean, no one is suggesting that. No one is suggesting that all of the communications gets decrypted. So we're in a world where everything is decrypted. It's just hiss. It's white noise. So that says they have to use the metadata or endpoint recognition to find the specific dialogues they want, and then have a way of decrypting those on demand, and then seeing if there's anything there. We know that the problem is that means that any arbitrary communication can then be decrypted. If they're able to decrypt any one of them, then they can decrypt them all. Wow. So I just and again, it risks damaging the high volume ease of use case, which is what Apple, to quote a Silicon Valley target, what Apple gives us is very, very secure instant messaging, as do all the other IM clients. Super ease of use. But that's all. It's the ease of use. So if you don't need that, and somebody a perfect example is Threema. Threema is my choice for instant messaging client because it's less easy to use.
Right.
You have to physically exchange the key, and that's cumbersome. So people don't use Threema because that's a few hoops to jump over. Well, if you absolutely have to have security, that's what you do. And then you use a courier to exchange a couple QR codes written on paper, which you can burn or eat depending upon what, in order to get the keys exchanged. And then you have absolute security. But iMessage just kind of works. So that's what everyone uses. So my point is that it's like it's the wrong target. It's why it's a whipping boy. It's why it's a complete red herring.
Right. Great stuff, as always. And the problem is that everybody listening to the show knows that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I mean, I guess the best thing to do is just keep saying it.
They do know people. They do know people.
And keep saying it because it will eventually – well, I think people convinced David Cameron that it couldn't be done.
Yes, and I don't know if I don't know if I had any influence to this one senator whose aides had me on speakerphone.
I bet you did.
But somebody told them to call me,
right?
And because I could explain it to them,
right? And
I ended up giving them a strong argument, which was unfortunately you can't take back the math. The math is already out there.
It's already out there.
Yeah.
We know this because remember when people were wearing T-shirts with a strong encryption code on it, and
because copyright was trying to be used.
Well, in the munitions laws,
that
right?
source code is copyrighted,
right.
and it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we know this already. That this is there's no way to stop it. The horses left the barn.
Yeah, and the fact is, sure, maybe your corner criminal will use his iPhone stupidly, but no know people.
Not the really bad guys.
Exactly. Not the ones we really care about.
We know they're smart enough because Osama bin Laden was living in a compound for years where it was expressly forbidden to have any internet. He knew.
And
they had
and it was
couriers.
Yes, it was by torturing, or no, we don't use that word. It was by extreme interrogating a courier that we were able to get the information.
That's, by the way, not clear either, but that's the story.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Well, Steve, from your lips to the Congress critter's ears. And by the way, I'm having a lot of fun with this game. Man.
Oh, Leo, it's going to suck you in.
I feel like it's Ender's Game going on here, right?
Yeah.
It's really fun. It's beautiful and it's slow, which is nice. So you don't have the panic, thing going on. I think I'm starting. How do you get a planet to expand, though? I can't.
Okay, now what you're not doing is draw a circle. I mean, like draw a chord across one of those things.
Yeah.
And that selects them all.
Yeah.
And then tap where you want it to go.
Right. Well, I've been doing it one at a time, Wednesday, Tuesday, because I want to reinforce these planets as I maintain this forward base.
Exactly.
It takes a long damn time. That's the only negative, but it's really fun.
It's not meant
really
to be
fun.
Rushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of.
He says, and I think this is true. He's tried to strip the elements of real-time strategy games down to the bare, essentials, which is this, right?
Yes. You have one thing you can do and one type of action, but yet there's a huge decision process.
Right.
Ooh, and look at those guys fighting each other right now.
Oh, it's a battle. But I think I'm gonna prevail. Yeah. That orange guy. More reinforcements to the forward posts. See, I'm whoops, didn't mean to do that. Don't go back there, guys. Go here. So I'm trying to bring up the guys in the rear to strengthen.
Auralux, Auralux.
Game. Oh man! All right, thank you, Steve. I'm going to be kind of busy. That's on iOS and Android, by the way, which is nice. You can play it on all your platforms. Steve Gibson is at grc.com. That's his website, and that's where you'll find Security Now, of course, including transcripts, written transcripts. There's no way to pause this, is there? I just have to let the war go on.
Good question.
I don't think there is. So you'll forgive me if in between I just tap some planets. You'll find written transcripts. Oh my God! You'll find. You'll find 16 kilobit versions. That's the lowest quality audio we offer, but it's for small, people with bandwidth limitations, which increasingly is everybody. We also have lots of free stuff there. All of his Squirrel and the Perfect Paper Passwords, and of course his bread and butter, SpinRite, the world's best hard drive maintenance and recovery utility. If you have a hard drive, you must have SpinRite. We have on our website both audio and video, twit.tv/SN. We also have put versions up for every podcatcher to get. So if you can subscribe, and please do, that way you'll get every episode. Just search for Twit. You'll find what you're looking for. We do the show on Tuesdays, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern Time, 21:30 UTC if you want to watch live or join us in the chat room. I think that's everything. Steve, have a great week. Enjoy.
We'll do. We'll grc.com/feedback.
Oh,
because
questions and
next
answers.
week, next week is a Q&A.
And I got an email from Oscar on my PIDP or PIDP.
Oh, yeah.
He said, I forgot to send it to you.
Yay.
Well, yeah. So he refunded my money. Thank you, Oscar. And then he said,
so he did.
Well, I said, don't go to, because I guess he'd sent everything out. Don't go to crazy lengths to get another one for me. Oh. He said, no, I'm going to get you one. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
That's the Raspberry Pi-based PDP-8. Yesterday I had Larry Wall, the creator of Perl, on, and we were talking about his early days of computing with a PDP-11. And I should have told him, we got something for you, Larry. All right, Steve, thanks for joining us.
Okay, my friend.
Next time, everybody.
Talk to you next week for a Q&A.
All right.
Security Now.